Hi, it's Mr. Schneider again. Today we're looking at third parties. So all parties other than the Republican Party and the Democratic Party are known as what we call third parties, and there's a plethora of them. There's a lot of them. Okay, let's talk about them. So one thing that third parties do is they introduce new ideas or press for a particular issue. So we're going to watch a little video here where the Libertarian candidate Gary Johnson talks about their party's platform about legalization of marijuana.
Hey everyone, it's David Begno. So, four third-party presidential candidates debated in Chicago Tuesday. One of them was former New Mexico Governor Gary Johnson. And to give you an idea about how different this debate was than the other ones we're used to seeing, I want you to listen to what Johnson says about the war on drugs. He gets very passionate and even personal.
90% of the drug problem is prohibition related, not use related, and that is not to discount the problems with use and abuse, but that should be the focus. So let's legalize marijuana now. And right now in this country, we are at a tipping point on this issue. 50% of Americans now support legalizing marijuana. Why is this the case? It's because we're talking about it. It's because debates and discussions are raging at dinner tables that haven't been raging at dinner tables in the past. So let's regulate it. Let's tax it.
Make sure you keep up with all the latest political news. We've got it on our YouTube site.
All right, so that message is obviously different from the Democrats and their Republican stances. The second thing is let's look at some examples of third parties. We're going to look at some of the third party candidates running for president. But I want to say again that there are hundreds of third parties. And in class, we'll look at a list of all the different third parties that are out there.
The 2016 U.S. presidential race is inching closer to the finish line, with Democrat Hillary Clinton and Republican Donald Trump presumed to be the party's nominees. But a May 2016 poll suggested that more than half of Americans are dissatisfied with Clinton and Trump, leading many to look towards a third option, a third party. So who are some of the third party candidates? Well, among them is Tennessee-based attorney Darrell Castle, who represents the Constitution Party. Similar to the Tea Party movement, the Constitution Party is based on the idea that the U.S. has moved away from its core values laid out by the Founding Fathers. The party promotes limited government, low taxes, broad individual freedoms, and laws that align with Christian values. In his first speech as the 2016 nominee, Castle said that he would close the Federal Reserve and pull the U.S. out of NATO and the UN. But those on the ideological left may be more apt to go for Green Party nominee Jill Stein. Stein is a Harvard Medical School graduate and has a political focus on public health and the environment. Stein has promised to address climate change and create renewable energy jobs through a so-called Green New Deal, a play on FDR's New Deal initiative to rebuild America after the Great Depression. The plan would cut military spending by 50% and increase taxes on stock market speculation and multi-million-dollar real estate purchases. When Stein sought out the White House in 2012, she won nearly 500,000 popular votes. The most popular third-party nominee is former New Mexico Governor Gary Johnson. Johnson represents the Libertarian Party, which is the third largest political party in the U.S. It promotes itself as more culturally liberal than Democrats and more fiscally conservative than Republicans. As such, libertarians have been known to favor lower taxes, gun rights, same-sex marriage rights, and ending the war on drugs. Johnson has marketed himself as a leader who would slash public spending and balance the budget. During his 2 terms as governor, Johnson reduced taxes 14 times and cut state spending by vetoing nearly 750 bills, earning him the nickname Veto Johnson. Johnson ran for president in 2012 and won over 1 million votes, more than any third-party candidate since 2000, and in fact, more than all the other third-party candidates combined in 2012. But that's only about 1% of the popular vote, and third-party candidates need at least 5% to even make it on the ballot for the fall election.
All right, so that's just an example of a couple of the people that are running for president. Lights went out. Third parties rarely win. Sometimes they might win. They're more likely to win a local election, but they've never won a national election, and they win very few state-level elections. But what happens is sometimes they draw votes away from other candidates.
alien space reptiles. It's true. We are aliens. But what are you going to do about it? It's a two-party system. You have to vote for one of us.
Well, I believe I'll vote for a third-party candidate.
Go ahead. Throw your vote away. Candidates, they're nothing but...
All right, so and that's what some people will tell you is that voting for a third party is throwing your vote away. My opinion, it's not. You can vote for whoever you want. If you don't feel either two candidate is qualified to be president, and I'm talking about presidential elections now because we're in a presidential election year, then vote for somebody that you think is qualified, even if that's a third party candidate. They often revolve around a political personality, meaning that it's often around one person. Libertarians, you hear a lot about Gary Johnson, but probably the most famous third party candidate was Teddy Roosevelt, who had actually been president. And then he came back to run again because he didn't like the person that succeeded him, William Howard Taft.
While campaigning for a third term of the presidency in 1912, Theodore Roosevelt exited a hotel in Milwaukee and took a seat in an open-air car. As a crowd gathered around the vehicle, Roosevelt stood up to wave to them. At that moment, John Shrunk, a local saloon keeper, lunged through the well-wishers and shot TR from a distance of less than 7 feet. The bullet entered his right breast, was slowed by a folded copy of a speech he was to make later at his eyeglasses case, and lodged in his chest. As the would-be assassin was subdued, Roosevelt assessed the damage, and when he reached under his shirt to feel the wound, his hand came out bloodied. His aides insisted that Roosevelt go immediately to the hospital, but TR refused their pleas and demanded that he proceed as planned to give a speech to a crowd of 10,000 people who were waiting to hear him speak. Once he arrived, and even though the right half of his body was turning black, Roosevelt mounted the stage unaided, unbuttoned his shirt front to show the audience the spreading blood stain, and declared, "I have just been shot, but it takes more than that to kill a bull moose." Roosevelt then spoke for 90 minutes before finally consenting to be taken to the hospital. The bullet was not removed, and he carried it with him for the rest of his life.
What a neat story. So yeah, obviously the most famous person ever to run for a third-party candidacy. And then finally, they often take votes away from the two major parties, as we talked about. The most famous example of this is probably 2000, when Ralph Nader was a third-party candidate, and he took votes away from Al Gore, and many people believe that's why Al Gore was not elected president in 2000.
Do you ever wonder why you've only got two choices when you walk into the polling booth on election day? Actually, you don't. There are plenty of other parties aside from the Democrats and the Republicans. But who are they?
The two largest third parties in America are the Libertarians and the Greens. Libertarians don't really fall on the left or the right. They believe in total individual freedom and want the government to get out of people's lives. They're pro-choice, pro-guns, pro-gays, and pro-drugs. The Green Party, planted firmly on the left, strongly supports policies that strengthen environmental protection and social justice. Neither scored higher than single digits on election day. And if those two don't sound like your cup of tea, there's also the Reform Party, made famous by eccentric billionaire Ross Perot in the 90s. They're for folks who are fiscally conservative, but who want the government to stay out of social issues. Or how about the Constitution Party, which is so conservative they're pro-life, pro-gun, anti-tax, and anti-gay that it makes the Republicans look like they're on the left. Speaking of which, there are at least a dozen socialist or communist parties fielding candidates in America today. And just in case you thought prohibition was something you learned about in history class, there's still an official prohibition party fielding presidential candidates trying to take away your booze. So why haven't you heard more about these other guys? Because there are 50 different sets of rules for getting on the ballot. And
the system can be so complicated that smaller parties can find it very, very, very difficult to navigate the political waters. So what do you think? You going to vote for a third party this year? Do me a favor and let us know. Log on to takepart.com/Tuesday, comment on this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel, send us a tweet too.
All right, so that's about third parties, guys. Podcast 2.3. Thanks for watching.